Okay, so this is the social psych reading that's on pages 643 to 650. This is the first video in social psych. Okay, so first off, what is social psychology? Psychology that studies the connection of different people by studying how we think about, influence, and relate to one another. Social psychology looks at how people's thoughts, feelings, perceptions, motives, and behaviors are influenced by other people. Okay? It tries to understand our behavior within the social context, so how one individual may be impacted by others, by your group. So this is really looking at the sociocultural perspective when you're talking about biopsychosocial. Okay, we have learned a number of different fields within psychology. We have studied intelligence, and we looked at motivation, emotion. So what do you think social psych is? And this is what I just kind of referenced to you. It's really yourself in the center, and then how the other things in your environment are going to influence you. Your family, school, work, friends, community, culture, and then the world. So there are three major themes in psychology or social psych, and I split it up into, first you're going to talk about social thinking, so our attitudes, what we think about when we meet an individual, social influence, how others maybe influence us. This is going to talk specifically about groups and how groups can influence you. And then the last one is then the interaction. How are you going to relate to other people? I did split that up into video 3 and 4. All of these videos should be completed by Monday. Okay, we're going to do a heavy job in the beginning with all the notes, and then we're going to pick them all apart in the next 2 weeks. So here's what this video is going to concentrate on: attribution error, the fundamental attribution error, attitudes, central route persuasion, peripheral route persuasion, foot in the door, and then door in the face, role, and then cognitive dissonance. So you will be assigned to one of these terms in the next couple days. So pay attention to each of the terms. Social thinking. First part is about social thinking. All right, so when you meet someone for the first time, do you ever state, I wonder why they act that way? Okay, social thinking is our analysis part. We start analyzing why they act a certain way. Okay, 2 ways in which we socially think about things is we like to attribute it to something, whether it's the personality or it's the situation, so attribution, so why are they acting that way? And another thing that can influence our thinking is our attitude or our belief towards something. Okay, so our beliefs are what we really kind of think about in terms of a situation, and then the other one is maybe why essentially that is taking place. Okay, so the attribution theory is you're trying to explain someone's behavior by either crediting the situation or you're going to credit the person's disposition. Okay, so when a student walks in late to my class, okay, I'm going to try mentally thinking about it to explain that behavior. And the student is late. The first thing I'm going to think of most of the time is I'm going to look at their disposition. Oh, that student's late because they're lazy. Okay. Sometimes, however, we attribute it to a situation. Oh, I know why that student's late because of the weather. So you could do either way when you meet somebody, when you interact with somebody, when you're trying to explain somebody's behavior for doing something. Okay, you're either going to look at the reason why they did or didn't do it is because of a situation, or the reason why they did or didn't do it is because of their character. Okay, so the theory takes into account for why people think the way they do. You could either have situational or So situational, make sure you know the difference between the two. Situational is a view that says the environmental conditions influence people's behaviors as much or more than a person's disposition does. So this one's saying that you really think it's based off the person's environment. So the reason why I got into a car accident was because it was icy and I slid into the other car. Okay, I'm blaming the environment. Disposition then is going to a view that says internal factors, your genes, your traits, your character, your personality we just studied, influences our behavior more than the situation. So this one would think the reason why the person got into a car accident is because they're unfocused, they're irresponsible. This one's blaming the person's character. Okay, what we often do is we attribute it to somebody's character, and this is known as the fundamental attribution error. We tend to attribute people's behavior and misfortune to their personal traits rather than their situational forces. Fundamental attribution error, often known as FAE, is the tendency to overemphasize a person's traits while minimizing the situation. Okay, assigning the casualty to a person's characteristic when the casualty lies in the situation. People are lazy opposed to looking at the whole situation. So you guys do this a lot. Oh, my teacher's so mean. Okay, well, did you ever think that your teacher has a lot going on? Okay, or you may say a situation like, oh, teenagers, like that teenager is just so mouthy. Okay, did you ever think that maybe it's not their character? Maybe they just got yelled at by their parents. Okay, a little bit in terms of how we use attribution error. Okay, you're going to glance at these two characters or glance at these two people. Okay, instinctively, you might think if I said, who's the criminal? Okay, you're going to attribute it maybe to the way that they look as well. Okay, to their character. Oh, I think it would be the guy in the leather jacket. He has mean eyes versus the Harry Potter. Okay, who seems a little bit kinder in the face. So we do these things a lot of the time based upon the character in which the person is there. Politics use attribution as well. Liberals, okay, often use the line to make up the environment that the environment impacts the individual. Okay, so the reason why somebody couldn't get a job was because the job market is so bad. You may hear politicians start talking about why certain situations take place. The liberals really blame the societal factors. Conservatives, however, blame the person. The reason why they can't get a job is because they're lazy or because they're not motivated. So that's kind of interesting if you ever get into politics in terms of the way that they consider why people do certain things. Culture can also impact the attribution theory. The United States, oftentimes we blame situations for individual purposes, where it's like the housing market crash, it's because people wanted money. And then Japan usually blames the organization of why certain things happen. Attitudes is another thing. It's like our feelings influenced by our beliefs, okay, the predisposition, our reactions to objects, people, and events. So when you meet somebody, an attitude, okay, so a belief in something is also going to influence the way that you think about them. Okay, obviously you're not going to look at their character and their environment anymore. It's now the belief is really going to impact them. Okay, attitudes are pretty stable. If I have an attitude towards, let's say, I have an attitude towards short people, I'm pretty much always going to have this attitude. Okay, it's not a good prediction on how we are going to behave. Attitudes are kind of judgments, and it's not necessarily just because short people are short, it's not going to change the way that they behave in a certain situation. And attitudes can predict behavior. Again, that's something that an attitude towards something may predict the behavior in which you may act a certain way. Okay, there's two ways that you could pretty much two ways attitudes can change. Okay, and you can change somebody's attitude. If I want you to take psychology, I want you to be motivated in psychology, I could use two ways. The first way is the central route persuasion. When an individual focuses on arguments and responds with favorable thoughts, they really give you all the details. You should take psychology because you're going to need it in college, because a lot of the course is going to deal with real life stuff. A lot of the course is going to, you could get an AP credit. Okay, peripheral route persuasion is when an individual is influenced by the incidental cues such as the speaker's attractiveness. It's very indirect. Okay, so maybe I could tell you to take AP psychology and I could pass out candy and cookies and try and get you, kind of persuade you that way. Okay, think about buying a car, central route versus peripheral route. When a salesperson comes up to you, they're going to tell you about all the bells and whistles to the car, and they're going to tell you that it has the best gas mileage and best this, best that. That's central route persuasion. They're giving you all the details. However, what if the guy that sold you the car wanted to sell you the car was really attractive, or the girl was super attractive? Okay, you may be more prone to buy that car because you want to make a connection with that person. Okay, because central route persuasion is less superficial, it often becomes more an enduring belief. It's usually one that is probably better to take into consideration because it's got those facts. Okay, sometimes people's attitudes, they follow their behavior. So they do a certain behavior and then the attitudes follow. Okay, I can have, you could do a certain behavior and then sometimes you can get an attitude to follow you. So one is foot in the door. Foot in the door is when an individual who's agreed to a small request later complies with a large request to get to people to agree to something bigger. So I want to go on spring break I want to go on spring break. I want to go on a trip. I want to go to Mexico for spring break. I want to go with all my friends. So if you were to go up to your parents and ask them that, they'd probably say no. Okay, but what this belief states is start small. So, hey, Mom, can I spend the weekend at my friend's house? Sure, no problem. Hey, Mom, can I go to Michigan with my friends next weekend? Okay. And then eventually towards the spring break time, if you ask your parents, hey, can I go to spring break with my friends, they may say yes because you started smaller and then you gradually got bigger. Door in the face would be like you came right out and asked your parents if you could go to spring break. They'd slam the door in your face and then you come back with a smaller request. Okay, cognitive dissonance, proposed by Leon Fessler, says that people's cognitions and actions are in conflict, a state of dissonance. They often reduce the conflict by changing their way of thinking. Okay, so my example on this one, a highly motivating state in which people have conflicting cognitions, thoughts, especially when their voluntary actions conflict with their actions. So here's my example. Smokers tend to experience cognitive dissonance. It's widely accepted. The thought in their head was that cigarettes cause lung cancer. Okay, so they're smoking and they know they're doing this behavior. Okay, and they know in their head the behavior is bad. So they got one action that they're doing, and then they got the thought process. Those two things are kind of in conflict, the behavior and the thought process. So they change their thought process. Okay, what they think then is what I have below. For example, a smoker could rationalize his or her behavior, concluding that everybody dies, so cigarettes aren't necessarily changing it. Everybody's going to die at some point, so I'm just going to keep changing it. Or a person could believe that smoking keeps one from gaining weight, okay, which would also be unhealthy. So another example could be Diet Coke. A lot of people criticize one another for drinking Coke. So I drink Coke, I drink Coke, I drink Coke. I'm going to change my thought process and kind of say, because those two things are conflicting, I keep doing it, but I keep thinking it, but I also keep doing the behavior. I could change it. It's like, well, everything's bad for you, to make myself essentially feel better. Social norms is the last term here. It's a group's expectations regarding what is appropriate and acceptable for its members' attitudes and behaviors in a given situation. So police officers have social norms in which they're going to follow. Okay, social norms is things like the job or the duties that the roles that they're supposed to be following when they're performing certain things. So it's their attitudes that they're supposed to be taking, and it's their behaviors that they're supposed to be following. So social roles, one of severally socially defined patterns of behavior that are expected for a given individual. The roles people assume may be as a result of a person's interests, ability, goals, and so forth. Okay, so your social roles and your social role is the police officer, and then the norms are the rules in which you follow. Okay, so the role is I'm a teacher, and the norms I'm supposed to follow are I'm supposed to dress a certain way, I'm supposed to act a certain way. Okay, so there's social psychology reading 643 to 650. See you tomorrow.